3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Welcome to the DFP Community Podcast, brought to you by Documentary Family Photographers Worldwide, DFP for short. I'm your host, Heather Whitten. If you're a fan of real, raw, and beautiful moments captured through the lens of family photographers from across the globe, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about showcasing the incredible work of everyday documentary family photographers you might not have heard of yet. Each episode will dive into the stories behind their photography, explore their unique projects, and get to know the people behind the camera. We're here to celebrate their journeys, encourage connection, and remind you that the world is full of inspiring photographers you can learn from and reach out to. So whether you're a seasoned pro, an aspiring photographer, or just someone who loves a good family story, get ready to be inspired, empowered, and connected. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here with Julia Chang-Lomonico, who is an interior designer turned award-winning New Jersey-based photographer and mother of two. Hi, Julia. Thanks for being with us today.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we'll just jump right in. How long have you been working with families as a documentary family photographer?
Oh, geez, probably about almost 10 years now? Yeah. Gosh, it's so weird to say that out loud.
I know. That's how I feel. Somebody asked me the other day how long I'd been a photographer, and I said 15, 16 years. And I was like, wow, has it really been that long?
Yeah.
And how many families have you been able to photograph so far?
Oh, gosh. Probably over 100, but I honestly lost count. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot of families, yeah.
That's prolific. I love that so much. Go ahead.
Mostly, but yeah, it's, I was going to say that I've photographed a lot of families, but, I do photograph my family a lot. And I think a lot of people listening that are also documentary family photographers, they photograph their family quite a lot. So
yeah, definitely. Myself included. So we'll have lots to talk about there. I love in your intro and in the bio that you sent me that you have a history with your early career being an interior designer. Can you tell us a little bit about how that work shaped you as a photographer you are today?
Yeah. I have a fine arts degree in interior design, and I think it really allows me to study spaces and how people interact with space. That's something that I kind of, that I've always found interesting. And specifically within the photography realm, it's just, I think for me, it's just another way of looking at my subjects. Just looking at how people interact with their environment is interesting to me. So,
yeah, I love that. And how do you think that that's played into how you photograph families? Like, do you approach it setting first, or more the connection between the families? Like, how does that play out?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think as far as, technically, I am always looking at space and lighting and things like that, and how to find good compositions within a space. Mm-hmm. But obviously with our genre, we have to, moment is a relationship, and moment is also is like really important, in our work. So, it's this balance between the two. And I think and I also am interested in, like I said before, I'm interested in how people use space and use the things in the space, especially because, space is, or the environment is most of the time inanimate, right?
Right.
And sometimes it can change behaviors, right? Like if you're in a bedroom versus if you're in a kitchen, or if you're in, more intimate spaces versus, public spaces, what does that elicit? And what kind of interactions happen in those type of spaces? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite space of the home that you like to photograph in, or?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, I think it depends. I mean, I love photographing in the kitchen because there's always something going on in the kitchen, but I also love being in bedrooms, like specifically like children of like all ages, their bedrooms, because I feel like the stuff that they collect is really interesting to me, and it tells me so much about what that person, usually a child or even teenager, values and what they like hold on to and what they keep. So I feel like that's very helpful in visual storytelling, the bedrooms.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like the bed, but just like what they like the stuff in it. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's wonderful. And how, what is like, do you have like a most challenging space that you've worked in, or a story about a challenging time space kind of gave you in a home?
I think bathrooms are always tough, but I also like the challenge of bathrooms. I don't know, like I guess when there's like not a lot of space, you know, so that's why bathrooms are tough, and also because they're, you know, you're also dealing with, you know, kind of gauging, you know, the subject's how comfortable, like how much privacy they want, you know, so there's like the physical aspect of it,
Right.
but then there's also the navigating the like kind of reading the tiny room, reading the room on what they're allowing you to photograph in these kind of in like a bathroom, you know.
I love that you brought up privacy and bathrooms, because I feel like, yeah, every photographer probably faces this in like a day in the life type of session, especially with small children, or children of any age, and family members, especially probably dads and things like that. Do you have like a conversation beforehand about privacy, or do you have like a standing rule or something like that?
Yeah, I think well, I think first and foremost, people that find me, like I do have photos of, you know, bath time and things like that on my in my portfolio, right? And like, so in those initial conversations, in those initial emails back and forth, like they are seeing my work that has that in there. And I do talk about it a little bit, like in the beginning, you know, kind of before they hire me. Situations like if I'm entering a house and we're at the end of the day and we're getting into like bath time and such, a lot of it is just like reading the room and reading the situation. I think my general rule of thumb in my head that I have going into it is if the child is like in kindergarten, is like start elementary school, I kind of like just really hold I hold back, you know, and it's on what I photograph. But it really is kind of talking to the parents, talking to the kids too, you know, like I've had parents, you know, saying like, yeah, it's fine, you can totally take pictures of whatever you want, but like I had a specific situation where the mom was very open to having her kids photographed, you know, in whatever situation. But the boy, he did not feel comfortable and he didn't say anything, but he like started to close the door and the mom started to open it again. And to me, I was like, okay, if the boy doesn't feel comfortable with it, I'm gonna step back. Like, I don't want to, like, I don't want to break that, that boundary, you know.
Right.
Like, to me, that's his way of saying like, no, I don't feel comfortable with this. And I think it's important for us to respect definitely what the parents say, but what the kids are communicating, you know.
Yeah, definitely, because I feel like children, no matter how old or young, like are definitely able to communicate their comfort levels with us.
Absolutely.
And embrace that autonomy. So I feel like when you're respecting that level of communication and autonomy, it just goes that much further with getting access to the children in other situations.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to say that I love that he was closing the door, because that's kind of my rule that I tell my families when I'm walking into a situation, the parents and the children, that if you don't want me somewhere, like, I will follow you into every room of this house. And if you don't want me, just close the door in my face. Like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like, I will not be offended. I will get the clue, but it doesn't have to be a big conversation or a
Right.
big, like, to do. It just can be as simple as just closing the door and letting me know that, you know, this is off limits, or we need some time, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. So you have 2 daughters. How old are they now?
They are 12 and 10. Almost 12, almost 13.
Yeah.
In January she'll be 13. Yep. 12 and 10.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And
Yeah. And you've been homeschooling them now for how long?
I've been homeschooling since COVID. So the fall of 2020
Wow.
is when we started homeschooling officially. And this past September, these past 4 years we've been homeschooling, and then this past September the girls went back to public school. So this has been a big transition year for us.
Yeah. And did COVID kind of like threw you into it, or were you planning on homeschooling, or?
So homeschooling was something that I had always thought about doing, but I think I was like afraid to do it.
Right.
And then COVID happened, and you know, and at the time my girls were you know, they were entering 3rd, and like when everything shut down, my youngest was in kindergarten, my oldest was in 2nd grade, and you know, it was just awful, the options, the schooling options. And I thought to myself, like, well, if I'm gonna do it, like, now's the time to do it, right?
Right.
And I just thought, like, you know, it's elementary school. I figured they're not gonna, I can't, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? You
Right.
know? They weren't like high schoolers, and I didn't have to like teach them, you know, calculus or anything. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Simple enough.
Yeah.
I'm sure it had its own challenges, but what has the experience of being a home educator transformed for you when it comes to your approach to photography?
Well, I think when you're around your kids for, you know, long periods of time, you know, essentially like 7 days a week, you definitely develop a lot more patience, and it really helped me hone into my my empathy, really, and just understanding of like what they're going through, right? So I think you know, and I have the perspective of both, right? Because my kids did go to school in the beginning and they're in school now. Just that, like, you're it, right? You're the teacher, you're the principal, you're the guidance counselor, you're everything
Right.
when you're homeschooling, and you're the parent, right? Which is this huge job just to begin with. So I think that it really made me have to become more attuned to, you know, their what they were going through, and then how that affected me, you know, photographically. I think it just really helped me to connect with my subjects better, and more quickly, and to read them, read what they want out of their photos, and whatever the situation was or is, in my subjects. And it gave me more opportunities to be creative and to see more creative opportunities in life, you know, because, you know, I'm teaching them, but it's really just like life is the school, right? Like living your life. And how that translated with my photography, I think it just gave me more, it just opened my eyes more to visual opportunities of like things to photograph, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that your children or your daughters are at that pivotal age, right? Where they kind of are growing out of that toddlerhood and early childhood and not wanting or being okay or unaware of being photographed, you know, by you. And now they're really kind of aware of themselves and aware of you photographing them and stuff like that. So what do you think the biggest challenge you faced while photographing your children growing up, or like at this age specifically?
At this age? Well, yeah. So I think at this age, they're like right at the beginning. I mean, older one, she's 12, turning 13. She's in seventh grade. She is in adolescence, right?
Right.
And my 10-year-old, I mean, some psychologists would say that like adolescence starts at 10, right? So, yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges. I think there's definitely like you said, there's a more self-awareness, and you know, with that comes like being more self-conscious, and then with that comes, you know, potentially less access to them in what I get to photograph. I think that's the biggest thing. I think you know, they definitely have they've always had opinions, but
Right.
they definitely have more opinions now. And I think just this adolescent period, or adolescent period, it's a very, you know, it's a big change for them, you know, and it's, you know, everyone goes through it, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
So and then just adding a camera just makes it that much tougher, right? So
Right. Yeah. And so you had experience or have experience with your own family and also with a bunch of other families that you photographed, photographing teenagers. So I wanted to speak with you a little bit about that, because I know a lot of our photographers, especially in this genre, have a hard time getting access, like you're saying, like to teenagers or people in early adolescence. So how do you approach photographing the teen years?
So, I will say I'm not by any means an expert at this, but I think we should be approaching, or the way I approach the teenagers or any you know, stage in life, is just really meeting them where they are. And I think that's kind of like very obvious to say, and like I think we all know this intellectually. But I just want to share this quick story. I was with my friend, and she's also a psychotherapist, and she works with teens and adolescents, specializes in working with them. And I was at this parenting clinic, and she'd asked us, all the parents asked, like, you know, what is the job of a baby? Like, what do we expect them to do? What are they supposed to be doing? And you know, a lot of parents would say like, oh, they're just waking up, right? Like, you have they're waking up, they're discovering the world, they're like, you know, oh, these are my fingers, you know. And then she asked, okay, well, what's the job of a child? And you know, I think the overwhelming consensus was like the sole job of a child is to play, right? To discover, to interact with the world, and to learn through play, right? And you know, there's still also awakening, and like, so as we humans get older, you know, we're still discovering things, we're still playing. And then she asked, what do you think the job of an adolescent is? And myself included, all the parents were like, oh, we're supposed to prepare. They're supposed to be prepared for the real world. They're supposed to trying to instill all these values of like, becoming self-sufficient and all this stuff. And I think we kind of jump this, we have like, as adults, like we have this goal of what we want our teenagers, our kids, our adolescents, our teenagers to become, and we focus on like that part of becoming an adult. And I do think becoming an adult, yes, you do need to be self-sufficient. You're supposed to be. Adults are like, the job is to like contribute to society, to your family, to your community. But what is this job of adolescence? And finally, and none of us parents were really getting to it. And she finally said, so the job of an adolescent is to figure out who they are. And I was like, wait, what? And it really like kind of, it's so simple, but it really blew my mind. Like, yeah, you're right. These, however many years it is, from 10 to, I think they say now like 25. It used to be like,
wow,
this time period, there's a lot of change going on, right? So I think when I heard that, it really made me realize like, oh, if that's really their job, like figuring out who they are, like that really like hit me. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to think how long it took for me to figure out who I was.
Right.
And so I think, so photographically, if I think about, this time period, like all the things that they're doing, yes, they're still playing, they're still discovering, they're still learning, but there's this added element of like, who am I? Right? I think it invites more empathy and compassion, and kind of like, oh, that's why you're behaving the way you're behaving, or that's why you're, shutting me out a little bit, or feeling self-conscious about something, so yeah, I think meeting all our subjects where they are, and specifically with adolescents and teenagers, knowing that like this simple job, I'm calling it a job, but like situation that they're in, that they're just really just trying to figure out who they are, can help decode a little bit some of these situations that we run into when we're photographing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do teens figure out who they are, and how do you find visual representation of how to photograph it?
Okay, so yeah, that's a really great question. I think I'm right in the thick of it, right? My kids are entering in adolescence. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to is Ask Lisa. Lisa D'Amour. She's written several books about teenagers. She has a book, Untangled. She has, I think her most recent book is called The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she breaks down these 7 tasks of adolescence. I'm just going to read them to you. So the first task of adolescence, this time period of however many years, it's like 10, 12 years. The first task is parting with childhood. The second is joining a new tribe. Mm. The third is harnessing emotions. The fourth is contending with adult authority.
Yes.
The fifth is planning for the future. And the sixth is entering the romantic world. Mm. And the seventh is caring for oneself.
Wow.
So these 7 tasks are happening throughout these adolescent years. Like, it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And then they have to do school and all these other things. So if I look, and I'm a kind of photographer, like I I like to know what I have to do. Like, right. So if seeing these 7 tasks of adolescence, we can kind of start to see like, well, what does parting with childhood look like? Right. That's where I love like the bedroom, right? You have like a 15-year-old, you go into a 15-year-old girl's room, like what's in their bedroom? What are some like the 15-year-old or whatever that still has like all their stuffed animals, right? But at the same time, also has like, you know, like the clothing in her closet. Like, what does that look like? Like there's a lot of opportunities to kind of see, you know, what does parting with childhood look like for a teenager or an
Right.
adolescent at different stages, like a 11, 12-year-old versus like a 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old.
Right.
Joining a new tribe. Some of these things are definitely harder. I think joining a new tribe, that's, you know, obviously very social. If you do have access to a subject and their friends, you know, that's that can be really fun to photograph. Especially if like they're on a sports team or something like that. Like obviously there's like the actual sport and the actual activity, but you know, those moments in between when they're socializing
Right.
with friends. So harnessing emotions is about how it's more of like an internal like rewiring of the. Have you seen the movie Inside Out 2 yet?
Not yet, but I have
Not
seen
yet?
the first one.
Okay.
But yeah, not the second one yet.
So the second one, in the second film, Riley's, you may have seen this in the trailers, like her like that desk, that headquarters desk, gets an upgrade, right? And that's essentially is what's happening in the adolescent brain, and it's like slowly from like, you know, the more primitive parts of the brain to up into the prefrontal cortex. I'm getting really nerdy.
No, I love it.
They're getting an upgrade, right? And it's becoming more efficient. There's this term called myelination, and it's like where like, yeah, basically things are just becoming more efficient. But that also means like their brains are more reactive. Like, so there's a scene in the movie where, you know, there's all the different emotions like with this new desk setup, like control system, and like the emotions are just literally just like touching it, and then like Riley has like this huge reaction, whether it's disgust or fear or, you know, embarrassment or whatnot. And so you know, and I know I've have gone through that phase.
Right.
What that looks like visually can look like a lot of things, you know. Contending with adult authority, that usually kind of goes hand in hand. I think that's pretty easy to find visually, whether it's, you know, with devices or with anything really. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's also, Lisa D'Amour also talks about how during this stage, teenagers or adolescents are trying to figure out what they want to keep that from their parents and with their upbringing, and what they are trying to like separate from. And that is also part of parting with childhood. And that can also be an interesting thing to see play out, like, you know, when your teenager just is like annoyed with like how you chew food,
Right.
you know, like those kinds of things. And like those are like just as visually like reactive and can have visual impact as in your photos as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you gain access to photograph adolescents? Like we touched on it a little bit earlier about like respecting autonomy and things like that going a long way.
Yeah.
But what are your key tips or processes?
So I find that teens they're the same. They're just like kids and like adults too. They like we all as humans like we have this desire to show who we are, right? I think, kids, young children, clearly they do. They show you everything. They tell you everything. It's like they have nothing holding them back. But with teens, they still have the desire for that is still there, but because their brains are becoming more efficient at processing information, they just are extremely averse to the judgment. Mm-hmm. So I think it just goes back to empathy and compassion and meeting them where they are, and just like listening. For all my day in the lives, I know some people do it, some people don't, but I like to stay over the night before. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell my clients, because at the time, most of my clients, they had younger children. It was to, allow for the younger children to like not be freaked out when I'm like crawling in their bed
right
next morning, right? And having that comfort level, which then would give the parents a comfort level. Okay, my kids are comfortable. I can be comfortable too. But I think as my clients get older, I think it's even more important for the older children in the house to know, like, who is this adult in here and why are they interested in me? Like, and what kind of information, because a teen can totally smoke out, anything disingenuous, like a mile away. Right. So I think having that time with these teens without the camera in my face is really important.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's something that, a lot of us aren't implementing, that meeting first and staying overnight. I know it's been hard for me to do that, but it's such an important integral part. And the times that I have done it or spent extra time with the family beforehand, the access is just so much greater the next day or the following, time that we meet. So
yeah. Like if just that, like even if it's like 5 or 10 minutes to like just ask about what they're into, they really want to tell you. They really do, right? With,
We had a family photographer come and do a day in the life for us when we moved to Maryland, and she went and spent some time with my oldest, who was maybe 14 at the time, in his room, and got a beautiful portrait of him that like is elusive. I can't get that portrait, but she took the time to sit with him and talk with him and walked away with something that, I'll cherish. She uses in our portfolio. I know Venny appreciates like having, so yeah, I think there's something to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I want to switch gears a little bit as we wrap up, but you have an ongoing personal project that shows the multifaceted life of an ordinary piece of furniture that we all have, or most of us have in our homes, a couch. So what sparked this idea for you, and can you tell us a little bit about the project?
Sure. So the couch project started when my girls were pretty young, and I think like many young children, they interacted with this couch like very heavily.
Yeah.
Like I don't think, I would say for the first like 5 years that we had that couch, the couch cushions were actually we're on in the actual couch in the proper position, maybe like 10% of the time. Like most of the time it was some sort of fort, or it was being jumped on, or it was,
Yeah.
Right. And, with my interior design background and my propensity for, looking for really how people relate with space and inanimate objects, this really interested me. And so, yeah, I started photographing them. The girls were probably like preschool-ish, early elementary. And I just continued to photograph it. And there's this, so, you know, the comedian Tom Papa,
Yeah.
he has I don't remember where he says this, but in one of his sets, he talks about how dad, because he's a dad, right? How he says that dad is like the couch, right? That never changing, and just like everything else changes around the couch, but the couch is like the same, and it's reliable, it's always there. And I just really loved that metaphor for the couch. And he goes on about how, you know, how he relates it to being like a dad, but I was just really interested in what the job of this couch is. Like, you know, it is for us to sit, it's for us to gather, but I was fascinated about all these other roles that this couch had in our lives. So I wanted to photograph it. And then COVID happened, and we were home all the time.
Right.
And then we started homeschooling. So it just gave me more opportunities to find uses for the couch. And now that they are older, my girls are older, yeah, it is harder. There are less, you know, big visual ways to photograph it, but I'm still going to do it. You know,
Good.
I think it's a good challenge for me. And I have this little piece of painter's tape on the floor of like where
Oh, that's such a good tip. Yeah.
where I stand, where I kind of stand with my camera.
Yes, because every image is from the same perspective
Right.
that you see. So the only thing that really changes is like the couch stays in the same position, but what's happening on or around the couch changes.
Right.
So that is brilliant to put a little piece of tape on the ground, like a mark. I love that. And I love that you're going to keep doing it. And I love to see how that evolves as the children grow older. And hopefully you still have that couch when they're bringing their partners around. That'll be so beautiful to see. And the project itself already is so well done and beautiful. So looking through it. Okay, we're going to wrap up. So what's the biggest takeaway you hope listeners get from our conversation today?
I think in regards to photographing adolescence, just to know that it's all about connection, and once you have connection, when you meet them where they're at, it's just like photographing any other stage in life. If you meet them where they're at and you try to connect with them, you usually get access. You usually get the access. It might not be a lot of access. It might be very fleeting. It might be for a very short period of time, but you will get the access.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Oh.
And how can listeners connect with you once the episode is over? Like your website, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that?
Yeah. My website is www.juliachangphoto.com. You can find me on Instagram, also the same handle, Julia Chang Photo. I'm on Facebook too, but I'm more active on Instagram. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Julia, for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for having me.